Welcome to Bigfoot Society. If you have Bigfoot activity to report from the same areas discussed in this episode, please reach out to me directly after this episode. And if you'd like to be on the podcast to discuss a personal Bigfoot encounter, please reach out to me directly at bigfootsociety@gmail.com. Do you wish there was more Bigfoot Society to listen to every week? Well, there is now. If you become a supporting member over at Patreon, you get a special members-only episode every single week on Wednesdays, and sometimes even more episodes. Head on over to patreon.com/the Bigfoot Society. And now let's get on with the show. All right, Bigfoot Society got the privilege of talking to Joe. Again, you may remember we talked to Joe a few months back. He's a hunter from Mississippi, and he gets called in to interesting situations where people are having maybe not the best encounters with Bigfoot on their properties. But how are you doing today, Joe?
I'm doing pretty good. I hope your day is going well.
Yeah, it's a good day, just kind of chilling out, and we're getting a little bit of rain in Iowa, but we need it, so that is all right for me. So,
yeah, we getting a little bit of rain here. It's been cloudy last couple of days. It's fall time for sure, so we'll get our week of fall hopefully before it turns into winter.
Absolutely. So around here, I hear that sometimes the Bigfoot activity starts to amp up a little bit in the fall. Is that the same thing down in Mississippi, or?
Yeah, pretty much. It's in my area where I live. It amps up between the middle of September all the way up through February, and then it kind of dies down in the summer months. For the most part, is quiet. But this year we had activity a little bit all summer. Not every day or anything like that, but just little stuff here and there. But for the most part, in the autumn time, they're transitioning from eating mostly plants to going into finding their nuts or acorns, and then of course mostly a meat diet in the wintertime. So stuff does pick up around here. In the fall.
Absolutely. And we had been chatting a little bit on Facebook back and forth, and it sounds like there's some interesting things happening pretty close to your area recently. Would you be able to share a little bit about that?
Sure. I have stuff ongoing a lot. I tell people a lot of times that it seems like I'm a magnet for these animals. But ever since I've moved here in this house, we've had continuous activity, not every day like in some places I live, but this time of year, for example, when the sun starts going down around 6:30, twilight hits, it's like somebody opens up the gates of hell, and you hear all kind of screaming, and it's multi-octaves, and it might last, one scream might last 2 or 3 minutes, and then it'd be done for the day, and you might hear that 2 or 3 times, and it's done, and it may be answered and it may not, and I'm not sure what that's about. That's something unique to down here. But I've had friends come over that I was telling about a couple of years ago about it, and they researched. I'm not a researcher, I'm a hunter, but they research, and they come over while they were setting up their equipment. They heard it for the first time, and it shocked them so much that they completely forgot about their equipment. They were just sitting there saying, "What in the world? How do people around here not hear this?" And I'm like, listen, I don't know how they don't hear it. I hear it. It's the reason why I invited y'all to come over and listen to this stuff. But we have stuff like that. There's a lot of owl imitations this time of year, and even though there are owls, you can tell the difference. Um, you know, an owl will make the same sound every time because it's an animal that doesn't mimic other animals. But when you get an owl that starts out sounding like an owl and then morphs into sounding like a crow and then sounding like a primate, laughing or whatever, that's not an owl. Even though owls, especially barn owls, can make some pretty hair-raising sounds, you can tell the difference if it's an owl. For one thing, an owl doesn't sound like it's 500 pounds on a blasting PA system, and volume is a thing that I look for that too. But yeah, there's been a lot of stuff going on back and forth. I had Sasquatch crawl up to my camp, my bonfire I have out here in my backyard. Had one that was standing in the tree line, and the other one crawled up, and I was sitting around listening to some music and stuff, and I saw it, and it acted like it didn't think I could see it, so I snapped a picture of it. You can see the eye shine of the two creatures in the picture where they were there. Stuff like that.
How high up would you estimate that eye shine was in the picture?
The one in the tree line was probably at least 8.5 feet tall. The one on the ground, it barely crawled up. I watched it. I got out the next day, and I hadn't had my grass cut at the time. You can see where it had crawled up and laid there for a little while, and you can see the outline of it. But it kind of spider crawled up there. I can't explain how they do it more than that. I guess the elbows and the knees, the elbows are out and the knees are up, but it's almost like a crouching cat, but they crawl sideways, and it's weird, but it's kind of freaky if you're not expecting something like that. And I haven't seen that a lot, but in this area, I've had these creatures coming on my property since I moved in here. Matter of fact, the first day that we were moving in, there was a tree within 5 feet of the west side of my house that had a tree twist in it. And while we were moving in, I just got married to my wife at that time, and I was telling her, look, that looks like a Bigfoot twist on that tree. And she was laughing at me, and her son was laughing at me until we had one scream at us from across the fence, like directly across from that tree. And their jaw dropped, and I was like, see, I told you that's probably what that is. And the house that we're in now had been vacant for a while. I think that they were getting up under the porch, and the younger ones was staying around there till we come around, and they got upset because we moved in their house. But there's been things going on.
Absolutely. So you mentioned screams a few times. Do they sound almost like human screams, or is just something that's just completely different than any other sound? They sound like human screams, just like you screamed at the top of your lungs, just one loud blast. That happens more in the early fall time. In the summertime, it sounds more like a loud yawn, like, oh, like that right there. But it sounds like someone took a deep breath and almost like they woke up and they have the huge lungs and they yawned as loud as they could. And that happens in the early evenings, a lot of times when the sun goes down right around then. And I've always attributed that to a yawn. That's what I thought it was. And I'd hear this on podcasts and stuff, and they'd call it a moan. I'd be like, well,
why would an animal that big that wants to stay hidden moan like that? And to me, it makes sense if they woke up, they were just yawning and stretching or whatever. That makes sense to me. But that's what it sounds like to me.
That's very interesting. Have you heard of any sounds that sound like whoops in around your area?
Yes, I hear them all year long. You walk out outside and you can this week. I haven't been out in the last couple of nights, but Tuesday night I was out there, and it was quiet, and I heard whoop, 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 like that right there, and it was just one time. Well, about 5 minutes later, I heard a tree knock, just one loud whack. Sounded like somebody took a piece of oak and hit it up against a pine tree, and it echoed real loud. I've learned that I don't know how it is in every area, but down here where I'm at, if something answers another animal, it doesn't do the same thing. For example, if it makes an owl mimic, it's not going to answer with a owl mimic somewhere else. It's going to be either a whistle or a quick whoop or a tree knock. Or if it starts out with a tree knock, there's going to be a vocalization, but it's not going to answer tree knock with a tree knock. And I've got into arguments with people that say, well, no, if they have a tree knock, that's saying I'm right here, and another one's got a tree knock over there saying I'm over here. And I'm like, well, it's not worth arguing over for me. I know what happens here, and I can just talk about what I've experienced in my real life. So what they do over there, I guess it's up to their interpretation. But you'll hear tree knocks here. You'll hear owl mimics. You'll hear a turkey call at midnight, or at 1 a.m. Everybody knows turkeys are asleep when the sun goes down. You don't hear hens chirping at midnight or 1 a.m. Or you don't hear a morning dove holler after 10 p.m. and before 3 a.m. It's those sounds that I listen for that may be natural sounds, but they're out of context or they're out of time. If you're eating dinner at 11:30 and you hear an owl hoot, that's not normal, because an owl is out at night. And there's things like that goes on.
Joe, have you ever, speaking of sounds that maybe don't belong in a certain area, have you ever heard sounds that really don't belong in your area, like totally out of context for the woods?
Yes, I've heard things in the woods that sound like a lion roaring. It sounds like you listen to horror movies, or you listen to animal documentaries where you hear just this loud roar. It sounds kind of like an alligator growling. I know what that sounds like. Like an alligator will growl and make the water vibrate. It's a real deep, guttural growl. And I've heard that in the woods a lot of times and not find nothing or have anything that I can associate it with. And to me, that if you look at it in a Sasquatch context, that's an animal that's hid, that you're getting too close, and he's like, back off. I'm here. And it's just like with a dog, back off, or you're in my space. But I've heard things like that. I've also heard. I live within 5 miles of two different watersheds, and the nearest watershed is about a mile and an eighth straight behind me through a cow pasture, and it's within line of sight. Down there, sometimes you will hear something holler. It starts out like a wah, and it ends up in a howl. And I can't mimic that because I don't think my vocal cords are made to do that. But after it does that, the coyotes will kick in, and they will stir up, and then all of the dogs in the neighborhood will be quiet. And you'll hear a little while later, it may be an hour and a half later, you'll hear a loud wail and followed by a whoop, and then all the dogs in the neighborhood go crazy. And this is happening after 10 p.m. I'm sitting outside sometimes from 6 in the evening by my fire up to 1, 2 in the morning, and this is all happening in the middle of the night. When there be some nights when, for example, a week and a half ago, I was outside and you heard every cow in the area seem like they were moaning, mooing and lowing, and there was something hollering in the woods north of me. And in that direction, there's not any cows for about 5 miles, but it sounded like a bull got his testicles hung on barbed wire, and it was loud, and I had my younger son's like, "What is that?" I said, "I don't know, but I'm not going in the woods to find out, because whatever that is either hurt or he's baiting somebody to come in and check on a bull that's hurt." So we leaving that alone.
Yes, that's a good call. I'm not going to go near any creature that's having a bad day like that, for sure, or anyone that's pretending to. But have you ever talked to your neighbors about to see if they've had issues on their property as well?
Yeah, I actually run a dog kennels for a dog trainer, and his family owns, like, I guess probably 3,000 acres within the family around that part of the county, and it's just the property starts across the road from me and goes north and west, if that makes sense. And he's got a first cousin that when I first started working for him, he saw the decal of Sasquatch in my phone number that says, "If you see me, call me," on the back of my truck. And he's asking me about that. He's like, "You believe in that?" I was like, "Yeah, why? You don't believe in that?" He said, "I don't know." I said, "Well, they're around here." And he said, "Well, I've never seen one." He said, "But my son got in the tree stand when he was 30 years old, and about 8 in the morning, he called me up with his cell phone and said, 'Daddy, I need you to bring your gun and get in your truck and drive down here and get me.'" And it was only about 200 or 300 yards from the back porch, he said. And he laughed at him. He said, "Why in the world do you need me to do that? You ain't no kid. Walk back up here." He said, "No, Daddy, there's something in these woods." He said, "It's shaking trees, and I ain't coming down." He said, "I'm afraid to come down." He said, he went down there and got him, said he didn't hear nothing, didn't see nothing, but on the way back, there was a small tree that was pushed over the cattle trail that he drove down to get down there, and said that they had to get out and move the tree hook the winch up to the truck and move the tree so they could get out. And he just drove down through there, and they heard the tree fall. His first cousin is deceased now, but his property is just across the road from me, and he was was a lifelong farmer, and he raised soybeans and cotton and corn. And he has a section of his property. He raises and breaks horses, and he has a place that he is cutting hay. And he used to cut hay up till 11 or 12 at night. And my boss was telling me that he was down there one night, and he heard something scream at him that was loud enough that he was driving a tractor, a no cab tractor with the bush hog on the back, and he heard it scream, and he cut the motor down and stopped and listened to it for a little while, and it gave him the creeps. So he cut his he drove his tractor up to his truck that was in the field, was parked in the field, and left the tractor there, got in his truck and left. The next day, the tractor and the bush hog was flipped upside down, and the bush hog was still connected to the tractor. And this was a Ford tractor, and had a 6-foot bush hog on the back of it, where they were clearing that property out. Said it had been dry that night. There wasn't any rain. It was on flat ground. There's no reason why that thing should have been upside down, but it had been upside down so long that all the oil and gas and everything had leaked out onto the ground. And he quit doing any bush hogging or cutting hay after dark after that. And
wow.
And I got another neighbor up here that I talked to, and he lives about a quarter mile from me, and he's a special needs guy. He's probably 55 years old. He's lived with his mom his whole life and everything. She died, and he lives by himself. But I was talking with him one day, taking him to the store and stuff, and he seen that decal on the back of my truck, and he said, people think I'm crazy because I think boogers are in the woods. He said, but I hear them out here all the time. And, I said, well, if you want to talk about it, tell me about it. He's like, well, I don't know what to tell you. And he told me about another neighbor that has some sheep that something would get the sheep every now and then when the sheep would lamb. They might have one or two a year that would come up missing. And there's a hog farm he knew about down in Hatchie Bottom, up there about 5 miles from our house, that it's got a hog farm that he said they would come up missing and stuff. But there's people around here that know about it. And I've been down here about 4 or 5 years, and I'm starting to meet enough people, and they get to know me enough that they open up a little bit about it. Man, when I first moved down here, wasn't nobody saying nothing. My landlord say, well, I guess something's out. And I'd be like, what do you mean? She said, well, something's in the woods, I guess. You hear it moving around. And I've actually found a place up there behind her house where there's a tree twist where if I was 8 foot tall and I walked up and stood right there and looked at her house, I could see right inside her storm door in her back, in the back of her house, or watch anything that goes on her back porch. So I took her down there and showed her that, and she's like, yeah, well, I'm not getting out after dark no more. But it's definitely stuff that goes on around here.
Wow, Joe, it's even more wild when you hear that it's not just your area, but it's also your neighbors around your area as well are having the same or similar things go on. My goodness. Have you over the years, I'm sure you've observed a lot, you've heard a lot. Do you get the feeling that you're dealing with creatures that are more, let's say, they have a positive intent or they have a negative intent towards humans?
I think they have a neutral intent.
Okay.
For example, for me and you, a starling or a jackdaw or a blue jay, they're not on our food list, our grocery list. So if they fly around, we don't pay attention to them. If they're doing something odd that we think is interesting, we might sit there and watch them for a minute and be like, okay, that's funny, and go on. Well, I think these things look at us like that in a certain extent where, we're not necessarily on the food chain. But if they say something interesting and they're boring and you're doing something, say you're cutting grass or you're outside splitting wood or weed eating or whatever, and they're bored, they're like, oh, that's interesting. Let's see what they do. And then they go about their own business. I get a lot of people who have this accelerated sense of importance that we are to these creatures. They think, oh, well, they did this, it must be because of something I did. Now, it's probably something that they did and you just happened to be there. For example, I had a guy a few years back that called me, and he was adamant that Sasquatch was harassing them, trying to get in their house. So he was upset. He was scared. He was past upset. His wife was about ready to leave. She's like, listen, I might love you, but when our marriage vow said for better or worse, it didn't say it's going to be this bad. And so they had just moved in their property down in central Alabama, and they put all their money in it. They didn't have the money to move. They was a younger couple, and they had, I think, 2 kids and one on the way, or she just had the new one at that time. I'm trying to remember. Anyway, so he said, just come down here and see what we got going on. He said they're trying to get in the house. They're trying to tear up the roof, and it's driving us crazy. And I said, well, okay, I'll come down there. So I drove down there that next weekend. And my boys was at their mom's that whole weekend, so I stayed down there that weekend in his barn. I said, listen, here's what I'm going to do. Y'all do y'all's normal thing. I'm going to come out here in this barn. I said, it's September. It's not really cold. You got a hayloft up there that's warm. That's fine. I'm going to leave the door open on the hayloft, and I'm going to sit here and listen. And we're going to see what's going on. He said, man, I don't know if you want to stay in that hay barn. Said, well, if they crawl up in there and haul you off. I said, well, then, they got me and they didn't get y'all, and y'all were okay. And I said, but it may sound crazy, but that's something I'll do just because I think that what you're comprehending and interpreting, it may be a little bit different than what's going on. Well, to make a long story short, there was a group of 4 juvenile or pre-adult Sasquatch. I don't know if they were all male or all female or all mixed, but they were adolescents. All right, one would come up to the tree line, and he would holler real loud to see if he could get a reaction out of the house. All right. Well, then another one, and I watched this. Another one would run. After he hollered and they didn't get a reaction, another one ran around to the backside of the house and screamed closer to the house. And it was almost like, well, I'm going to outdo him, see if I can get something stirred up over here. Well, after that, they went and the guy called me on the phone. I was in his barn. And I had my phone on vibrate, and he called and he's like, they're here. I said, yeah, I know, I'm watching them. I said, you're good. These are juveniles. And another juvenile went up close and threw a good sized rock and hit the top of his metal roof. He had a corrugated steel roof on the house, and it banged real loud, and you heard the rock roll down from the barn. They're doing antics. And after that, another one was sitting there, and the guy opened up the door looking out because I told him it was juveniles. He was trying to see them. Well, he opened up the door and looked out, and they squatted down at the tree line. And the tree line was about, I guess, 80 feet, 60 feet maybe from his front door across gravel road. And he was looking, and he didn't see them. He's like, I don't see them nowhere. I said, well, they're squatted down in the grass right now. Oh, I had binoculars I was watching them with, and I said, listen, you close the front door, just leave them alone. They'll be okay. Oh, well, when he closed the front door, another one run up on the side of the house and slapped it just like that right there. And he'd listen in on the house to see if he heard any movement. When he didn't hear any movement, he moved around a little bit to the left, and he slapped the house again. And apparently he heard movement because it looked like he got tickled, and he run back to the woods. And you see them all had their heads together. It's almost like they were whispering, "Yeah, here's what happened. This what you know." It looked like a bunch of juvenile high school boys pulling pranks, and it would have been comical if it was humans, in other words. But for these things, what they do and what they the reason why they do it is not the same as why we do. They could very well have been saying, well, if we do something else, we might get one of them out here and snatch it up and leave. I don't know what they're thinking, but I just know what I watched. So when that didn't get nobody out, another one run down and jumped up on the porch and slapped the porch with both of his hands. Just jumped on the porch and made a pop and with his feet when he landed, and then he bent over just like a gorilla and slapped the floorboards. And I was talking to the guy, and you could hear the windows rattle. And I was like, "Listen, I know this is scary for you. You think this is the same booger doing this, but this is a group of younger boogers that ain't got nothing to do but get in trouble." I said, "So we can deal with this." And so the last one, when that didn't get any response, went around and shut the door. He grabbed the the doorknob and shook it. And then he went around to the back door and did the same thing. Well, that guy liked to come unglued in. He's like, "I'm going to get my gun. I'm going to start shooting." I was like, "No, listen, we're going to fix this. I'm watching this. They're mischievous. They're being aggravating, but they're not being hostile. We don't need the gun. We take care of this." And so, when they went around, they stopped and watched, and nothing. He didn't come outside, so they sat still. And then when they realized that they couldn't get nothing stirred up at the house, they all come down towards the barn because there was livestock in the barn. He had some goats down there and some chickens, and they was in the barn. Well, when they come down there, they come walking down the tree line, and they got past to where I couldn't see out the hayloft, but I could hear them. And they come around to the back, and there wasn't an opening in the hayloft up there. I couldn't look out back there. And there was a breezeway where you pull a tractor into the barn, and you go out the back, and that was open. And they come in there and start moving around and looking at stuff, and I racked a shell into my shotgun. I said, "All right, if y'all don't get out of here, I'm going to tell y'all's daddy on y'all." And I hollered as loud as I could, and you would have thought that they had tore down the side of that barn trying to get out of there. They didn't know I was there, and it scared them. And it was almost like teenage kids that got caught. And it was like, "Well, I'm going to tell your daddy." "Okay, well, daddy don't know we here. We better get going, And so they didn't come back the rest of that night. They didn't come back that next night. They didn't come back Monday night whenever he called me and let me know. I said, "Well, they'll be back, but this here is how you deal with that." And so whenever they come back at next Tuesday night, they were just hooping and hollering in the woods. And he'd call me on the phone. He's like, "Well, they're out here hooping again." I said, "Well, they're just feeling their oats, I guess. Just go out there and tell them to shut up. You're trying to sleep. Holler at them." I said, "They see you as the alpha male. They're trying to see how far they can push you until you react to a way that they're not alpha animals, or else they would have come in the door. Whenever you go out there and they run off, they're not shaking that door to get in the house. They're shaking that door to get a rise out of you." And so over the process of the next couple of months, it didn't go away easy, but he would go out there whenever they would start their stuff, and he would holler at them, say, "Listen, y'all be quiet. I got kids in here. You scaring the kids," and after a while, they got to where, okay, we know what he's going to do. It's going to be one time, and he's not coming out no more. And then they kind of left him alone. They still mess with stuff, take stuff out of the yard, but they would always return it. And it's just like with people, if you and I are together and I've got a nice hunting rifle and I set it up next to a tree and I go around and use the bathroom in the bushes, you know that I set that gun down and I'm coming back to get it. That's my gun. It's, as far as me and you's concerned, that's my gun. Well, with them, if I set that gun down and I walk off and I go use the bathroom, I'm through with that gun. It's whoever can get its gun at that point. And in that way, I don't think they understand the civilized version of owning property. It's whoever's whoever's got it. When they're through with it, they set it down and walk it off and leave it. And whoever comes along and needs it or wants it, they pick it up and take it out. And that in itself causes a lot of conflict in messing with these animals, as far as dealing with them on a daily basis.
That is incredible. And it sounds like you were able to really have some time looking at these creatures as they were running around, messing with the house, all that good stuff. Are you able to kind of describe what they actually looked like, what you saw? Was it similar to, what everyone says, or did you notice some things that may have been different than the normal?
Well, in different parts of the country, they look a little bit different. They don't look like Patty down here in the South. You see that at Patterson-Gimlin tape where Patty's walking across that creek bed and turns around and looks at you. That may be what they look like in the Pacific Northwest, and I've seen some that look similar to that in Texas. But down here, they look more like a mix between a Down syndrome chimpanzee and I guess a bonobo mixed, and they're pretty aggressive if you don't know how to handle them. But they're not just so aggressive that they're territorial because you're there. They're going to run you out. Like some of them do that, but that's usually the ones that's been shot at and things. But if you want a good mental picture of what one looks like, you take a chimpanzee and stretch his body proportions out to about 6.5, 7 foot tall. For a juvenile, 1.5 foot or 2 foot taller down here for a male, adult male. And there is a sexual dimorphism in them, in that the females are shorter than the males. An adult female don't get much bigger than a early young adult male, and the forehead, the brow is really pronounced. It comes out from a sloped forehead, and the eyebrows are almost protruding enough that you think, "Oh, that ought to make a natural shade for them." And that's why a lot of people think they see them with black eyes. It's because their eyes are inset so far that there's a permanent shadow on there. The nose is flatter than a human's. It's a hooded nose, but it is wide. It is got the nostrils pointed down. Some of them are pointed out, and I think that may just be a individual variance in the same species. But most of them down here's nose is a hooded, it's pointed down. There's a longer upper lip than humans have. And then the mouth is wider. It's almost like you see those cartoon clowns when they smile and their mouth stretches real wide to their ears. Their mouth is like that. Their teeth is like humans, but they're like this. They're huge. The incisors are probably, I don't know, the size of a square chewing gum. I mean, it's that wide. And I don't ever notice, they have canines, but I don't see like any massive canines like you would see on a baboon or nothing out of these here. They're pretty much like human teeth, but on a bigger scale. Their jaws are all wide and thick. You can tell there's a lot of muscles and bone mass in their jaw. They must have a really strong bite force. They got a neck, but their trap muscles are so big that it's like their neck is hid behind their trap muscles on their back. They're not all that. People say there's an hourglass shape to them. I'm pretty sure some of them have, but all these down here have like a gorilla type body. You don't have these massive arms and then little bitty legs or nothing like that, but their arms are longer than their legs. I think that when they're young, and I've got places I've seen that support this, that they live in the trees more than on the ground. I don't think they come down on the ground a lot until they're at least 5-6 feet tall. And I've got a friend of mine that has what I call a Sasquatch nursery in his yard, in his hunting area back there behind his yard. And there's a tree that is, I guess, 80 or 85 feet tall. It's a giant pine tree. On the side away from the road, you can see where something over generations, animals have slid down the side of that tree, and that bark is completely slick. On the other side, facing the road, the bark looks normal, but you can tell it looks like something slid down the side of that tree. And there are trees that are pushed over for the younger ones to learn to crawl and to climb on. And I've always hypothesized that the reason when you see a Sasquatch walk and he's walking in a straight line as opposed to waddling like humans is because he learned to walk on tree limbs, and they had to balance like that. Well, after they get big enough, they get on the ground and I can't nothing hurt them. They still walk like that because that's how they learned. And that would make sense. That makes sense to me because I've seen little ones up in the tree, and the only time that I've seen them come down is when the mom has been there and said, "Come on."
Sure,
that makes sense.
The similarities, how you talked about the similarities between them and the chimpanzees, but it's stretched out, is really. It's such an interesting mental picture, and not really the most comforting one, to be honest. But do you think, if you look into chimpanzees, their behavior sometimes can be just quite vicious, and they will just tear things apart. Do you, have there been time? I'm sure you've been around a lot of times where there's been Sasquatch that have been hostile environments as well. Have you seen those kind of same behaviors?
I've seen where they do that, and I think what you're getting at is they act uncivilized.
Absolutely.
And And that's what these people run around and say, oh, these are forest people that are gentle and they love nature and they want to be your friends. They're going to protect you, blah, blah, blah. No, they're not. You only hear stories from the people who were helped out of the woods. You don't hear stories about the people who walked up on one that was having a bad day, got pissed off, ripped them up, ate them, and left. It's just like with dolphins. People for centuries said, well, dolphins will help a sailor get back to the shore. Well, you don't know about the dolphins that took the sailor and pushed him out farther to sea, because there's nobody there left to tell that story. And these are kind of like the same way. If they were a type man, they would be more terrifying than if they were just another primate. And the reason why I say that, men don't have an idea of forgiveness. They don't have an idea I'll accept you like this. Humans, if they don't know what something is as a species, we kill it because we ain't going to deal with it and we ain't going to learn about it. But if they were another type man, they would have that same type of thinking too. And the fact that they live off a natural law, just like the gorillas and stuff that I watch on TV do, that tells me that they're a primate. People say, well, no, it can't be just a primate. Well, humans are just primates. I mean, on a scientific level, we are a primate. But if you take a Sasquatch, and if you take a gorilla, and you take an orangutan, and you take a bonobo, and you take a billy ape, and you take a man, and you set them in a circle, all of those animals live on land. All right. One of those animals don't fit because one of those animals isn't adapted to living on land. That animal doesn't have the strength to live without having to manipulate its environment so it can. It don't have the ability to eat raw food, just getting it and eating it without having to process it so its body can digest it. And it doesn't have the ability to stay out in the weather without having to manipulate textiles and stuff to survive. And that person is man, okay? We don't belong. And people say, well, the government don't want to talk about Bigfoot and Sasquatch and all these things because, and they'll fill in any reason that is convenient for them. My thinking on that is the reason why they don't talk about it is they've got, if they look at evolution, and they start with the rhesus monkey and go up that chain to where modern man is on that rise of man chart. I think you take that rise of man chart and take the modern human out and put a Sasquatch where he is. That would be the most evolved terrestrial primate on Earth. Okay, and the reason why I say that, when you look at the evolution of that of the species, it starts out small and gets bigger. Well, when you get the Neanderthals, and then they're our size now, and then that other one, trying to think. Anyway, he was 6.5 foot tall. We didn't evolve from a 6.5 foot tall archaic man down to a 5.5 to 6 foot tall modern man. That didn't work. So the natural rise of that would mean it would be a 7.5 to 8 foot tall primate, which would be Sasquatch. Okay, well, if you can sit there and look at that with a clear mind and an open mind and say, well, okay, well, where does humans come into this? All right, every culture we've got associated with a modern man says we were created. It didn't say we evolved. Every one of them said God created us in one way or another. So, maybe that was the early modern man that didn't understand science's way of saying, okay, we're not from here. All right, well then where are we from? That's a whole new can of worms. If they just come out and said, okay, well, we were a genetically engineered animal that people say that Sasquatch has our DNA. What if we've got Sasquatch's DNA? It's human arrogance that says that we are the top person and they've got to have our DNA. Well, what if what they called God come and seen the possibilities of what Sasquatch and these terrestrial apes could be? They added DNA to it, and they made a modern man. And maybe and there's all kind of crazy theories about the Sumerians and the Anunnakis and stuff. I don't know if I'll go along with all that, but it's something to think about. Maybe the reason why they don't want to acknowledge that is they've got to say where humans come from, and that because a human, we are really developed to be a semi-aquatic. If you look at all those other apes I talked about, they've got a lot of hair on their body. Okay, they can't swim good because they have all kind of drag off of that hair. Gorillas and apes and stuff, they don't have fat deposits like we do to help them float. They'll sink to the bottom and drown. We've got less hair follicles per square inch than even a dolphin or whale has. And they're aquatic mammals. We've got webbed fingers and toes. Apes don't have that. We've got the diving syndrome, just like a whale, where if you swim and you dive down so far, your throat locks up and you don't need to breathe until your body runs out of oxygen. Then you got to come up. And that's not even talking about the size to strength ratio. The human body is not as strong as any other terrestrial ape's body because it's designed to be held up with some medium like water or something like that. And that's the reason why we float. That's the reason why we've got a hooded nose to keep water out of our nose so we don't inhale it. There's a lot of stuff there and I'm going out on a tangent, I know, but there's a lot of stuff there that I look at and I think about, and if everybody just said, okay, they're real, and they said, all right, where's people come from? That would kill civilization. And I say all that to say that they do things like that. They hit an animal, they catch it, they rip its legs off and eat it before it's dead. I sat down there on Natchez Trace and watched 11 Sasquatch one night kill 3 deer, and it was like something out of nature documentary or something. I thought, wow, there's no way. But there's stuff like that I don't know why it's not filmed in America, because it's happening there. I mean, I wasn't looking for it. I just happened to be down there in a place where it was quiet, and there was a campground that nobody goes to on the trace, and I pulled down there just to see if I could hear anything. And that was something that just happened that night. And because I was interested in it, I wasn't afraid. It wasn't until I got back home and I thought, well, it's a good thing those deer didn't show up. Well, I was the only other thing there.
Now, I'm not the most familiar with the geography in that area. So that is in Mississippi as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Right. There's a Natchez Trace runs from Natchez, Mississippi, north to Nashville, Tennessee. At one time, that was the only trade route. And at one time, there was a northern route and a southern route that were divided. But yeah, Natchez Trace is a national park now that you can drive down and you can stop, and they've got different markers and stuff that tells places where things in history happened. And you can go and eat there. You can walk around. It's got horse trails, nature trails, and stuff like that. And I was at a campground that as far as I know, I'm the only one that's been down there in the last 5 years. And I've taken my boys down there and let them when they were younger listen to Sasquatch holler in the back of the truck. And that was just one of my places I went and listened.
And the ones that you saw tear that deer apart, do you think they're probably more adults then, or juveniles?
Yeah, I think they were adults that caught it. Here's what happened. I was parked facing the trace, and there was this, I guess, about a 6-acre clearing. There was trees lined up the trace, and then there was that clearing, and then the road that goes to the campground come the backside of that clearing, and then you go to campground. I was parked over there with my truck towards the road, and I had my windows down. It was in December, and it was kind of cool, but I was listening, and there wasn't any sounds anywhere. You didn't hear nothing. And I was there about 30 minutes, and I heard something coming through the woods. And I looked over in time to see 3 does run out of the trees to the south, and one was going so fast looking back it actually run into the back bumper of my truck. And the other 2 went around, and they went in that opening. Well, when they went out in the opening, they turned to go to the west towards Natchez, or the east going towards Natchez Trace. And 2 Sasquatch come out in the open there, and in the tree line out about 4 or 5 yards, enough for them to stand there. And they were obvious to the deer. Well, the deer stopped there, and they cut down to the west going towards the river, and there was 3 that come out of the campground over there. When they saw them, they cut to the north, and at the very end of the tree line up there, at the end, there was 2 that come out there. And when they come out, the deers just basically started circling around, and I heard something coming in the woods, and there was 4 of them come through the woods, like they'd been the ones that were pushing the deer. And they come around. They didn't even act like my truck was there. They couldn't care less if I was there or not. And they come out through there, and they started jumping at those deers and growling and hollering. And the deers, they get scared, and they'd run one way, and they'd let them run enough that while they were running one way, the ones behind them were walking up, closing in the gap, and the other ones ahead would holler at them, and they'd turn 90 degrees and run another way, and then they would come up, and they were just closing it in on them. Well, when they got to where that they couldn't get away, and it wasn't a small space that happened. You would think they would huddle them in until they could all touch each other, but that wasn't how they worked. They were probably 15, 20 yards from each other, but they were around these deers. And then this one come out of the tree and busted through the line just like it was a hog dog hitting a hog on when it was bayed up by dogs. And it hit the deer on the right side and knocked it down just like it tackled it, and reached over and grabbed its head and popped down. And it was a gory sound, bones popping. You could hear a couple of bleats out of the deer, but that didn't last long. And you heard deer popping, you heard skin ripping, you heard them growling. It sounded like that lion sitting there eating. I mean, there was growling. There wasn't any fighting over the food. The big one, when he killed his, he ripped off a back leg, and he handed it to a smaller one. And by smaller, I say 6.5 feet tall, probably. He might not have been quite that big, or I don't even know if it's a male or not, but he killed his and he tore his up and handed his out. And then the others that had killed those other deer took their piece and shared that deer around. And they eat off of 3 deer, and it was completely gone within probably from start to finish, probably 45 minutes from the time they ringed them up, coming out of the woods until they tore them apart and sat there and eat them. And then they just walked off like it was every day or Sunday meeting, and they just went about the business. It's like I wasn't even there.
That is absolutely incredible. So you're saying that the whole time it was about 45 minutes and you were there present for like the whole thing?
Yes, I sat in my truck. There ain't no way I was getting out.
No, definitely not. No.
I had my windows down, and I was hoping that they wouldn't notice my windows down, because when them 4 come out of the woods, 3 of them went in front of my truck and 1 went behind me. And it was just like they were going around rock. They didn't look in my windshield. They were focused on those deers. They didn't care that I was there. I wasn't making any noise. I wasn't moving around. I wasn't disturbing their hunt. And they didn't care that I was there. That's the thing. I was insignificant in their world at that time. And when they ate, they didn't look over to see if Joe was still watching them. They'd care less. They moved right on their business wherever they went. They headed out north, and that's the last time I saw them that night.
That's wild, Joe. Did the adult ones look like chimps as well, or did they look a little different than how the juveniles would look?
The adults looked like chimps, yes, but they look more thick as far as the difference in seeing a gangly teenager and an adult male, a human. All right, that is a good comparison. You could tell they were the same animal, they were the same sex, but the maturity was there. They didn't look like bodybuilders. They looked like big, sort of like the Caesar on the Planet of the Apes when he stood up, and you could tell, he was a adult male. I kind of wonder after watching Planet of the Apes if somebody didn't know how Sasquatch act when they did that movie, because there was a lot of similarities in how they acted with what I've seen in my experiences.
Now, I'm looking at a map, and I believe I'm looking at the right Natchez Trace State Park and Forest in Mississippi. If you go north, and right. it almost, if you were to go north, you'd almost get into Kentucky Lake, which would also get into Land Between the Lakes, which is, right. Do you think there could be a connection?
Well, sure. I think there's always that possibility. Here, when you look at Natchez Trace, you come through Colbert County, Alabama, and you hit into Tishomingo County, Mississippi. Right there on that border, on that state line is Bear Creek Campground. That's where I'm talking about. That was. But all up and down Natchez Trace, when I first moved back up here after Hurricane Rita, and I started going looking for me places to see if they were up here too. It was like I was in a school for hunting Sasquatch. It's like, man, they've got to be everywhere, or I've got to be crazy. But I've got to figure out which one it is, because there's signs all over the place, especially after the trees fall and you get to looking through the woods, and you can see like tree structures and stuff that's there, and those are boundary markers. I was over there down the road a little bit from Bear Creek campgrounds. There, right across the state line in Mississippi, there's an Indian mound right there, and you can stand on top of that Indian Mound and look up down Bear Creek in the wintertime when there ain't no trees and look around. I was sitting over there. There's a nursery down there too, by the way. I wouldn't suggest going around there if you're just curious, because they get aggressive down there. But I was watching for some Sasquatch to come out of the east. On the east, over about 10 miles from that place is Freedom Hills Wildlife Management Area in Colbert County, and they're pretty aggressive over in there. Anyway, I was watching for some maybe to come out there, and I heard something behind me, and there was one crawling up on the tree line coming around, and he got pissed off because I caught him watching me, because I heard him, and I walked over to the other side, and he was a good 9 foot tall, I guess. Thick fella. His head was so big you couldn't put a 5-gallon bucket down on it, if that makes sense. And he sat there and watched me, and I think a lot of times they watch to see if how you act to determine how they react. I never act like I'm scared. My personality is, if I'm curious or should be afraid, I'm going to be seeing what I can see, because my curiosity beats out my fear. And I admit that I take chances that I wouldn't suggest anybody else do, just because I know what I can deal with, and don't say, well, Joe sat here and did this, so I'm going to do that. No, Joe sat there and did that because he had the experience to know when it's time to get out there. There have been times when I've seen one and I'm like, oh, I'm gone. And I talk to him and walk on out of there. But, that's, you got to know what you're doing. There's no checklist you go down and say, well, if it does this, I can do this and be okay, or I better not do that.
You're dealing with something wild for sure. Joe, I know last time we talked, I believe you'd said that you haven't been over, you go all over the place, but you hadn't gone over to Oklahoma yet. Is that still the case where, you have yet to make it over there?
Over to where?
Oklahoma.
No, I haven't got to go to Oklahoma yet, but I went to Missouri last weekend to Mark Twain National Forest over there.
Oh yeah.
I went over and looked at some things. And I didn't see too much Sasquatch stuff. I actually put up a camp around a tree structure that I'm not absolutely sure that a Sasquatch made it, as opposed to maybe a hunter made a blind. But Sasquatch ain't the only thing in the woods you got to worry about. I left that over there because somebody was shooting through my camp 3 or 4 times, and I hollered, and they didn't seem to care if I was over there or not, so I packed up and left. But I'd rather run into a Sasquatch in the woods as another human, because a Sasquatch belongs there. If you in the woods at 11, 12 o'clock at night and you come across another human or group of humans, you don't know why they're there.
Oh, absolutely. I agree. Finding a human in the woods is, can be a lot scarier than a Sasquatch. So Mark Twain, from where you're, let's say Mark Twain from Mississippi, that's quite a haul. Is that?
Yeah, it was 4 hours. It was 4 hours from here, one way. Yeah, there's a little town called Doniphan, Missouri up there. My son's got a girlfriend up there, and he wanted to go see her for her birthday. And I was like, well, while you do that, I'm going to go up here and look around. And I happened to get up there on the first day of antlerless deer gun season. So I got up there and I checked in at the National Forest with the game warden, let him know where I was going to be, and everything. And he told me what nobody else going to be around there unless there were some day hunters, and they stay away from the designated campgrounds. So I set up a primitive camp. I went down to the end of the road down there where I was. There was a turnaround. And I put my camp in the middle of that turnaround. It wasn't an established camp. But the game warden told me if I found a place I liked on the side of the road, since where I was going was in a area that hunters generally don't go in. He said, listen, this is the first day of deer season. If you're just camping, I tell you to be careful. He said, but people don't go in that part of the forest. He said, you probably won't see maybe one or two people, and they'll be locals just looking around for deer spots maybe. So I went over and I set up, and those woods was quiet the whole time. When I got there, tell you a little bit of what I do. I set up my camp, and I got out there, and I walked out in the woods, past my camp towards the river down there where it was a little bit, and I just said, listen, I've had a rough week this week. I'm tired. I come out here because y'all got a beautiful place that's quiet, and I'm out here to settle down and just enjoy y'all's house. If y'all don't want me here, just let me know and I'll leave. I mean, I'm fine with that, but I'm just out here. I don't care about deer hunting. I'm not out here making mess. And I even when I got through talking, I went around, I picked up garbage and burned it while I was there to kind of clean it up. And I didn't have any problems out of that. I heard some walking around the camp area inside the tree line. Now, where I was, you come in from the west, but it was on top of a hill that had about a 60-degree incline from the bottom to the top. And whatever walked around was walking uphill, but it would go to the road and it'd turn around and it'd walk all the way back around to the other side of the road. And it did that 2 or 3 times looking around. And I heard it about 10:30 at night, and there's no flashlights out there, no motors running. There wasn't anybody. When I hollered out to see if anybody was there, nobody held the count. So I said, well, anybody that's out there walking like this, it's not a person. So I just stayed around the campfire. I didn't cook while I was in the camp. While I was gone, I went and eat out because I try to put as little food in the camp if I'm looking for Sasquatch as possible. And there are black bears up there, and I didn't want to deal with that either. But so I cooked 2 meals there. And that was just early in the day, so I'd have them something to eat. But my main meals, I just go into town and eat to keep from having anything. And that saved on having garbage and stuff. So there's stuff like that I've learned over the years not to do. I don't try to camp real close to a waterway. Even though I was within line of sight from the top of the hill, the waterway was a good, I guess, 1.5 miles down through the trees down there. I was on elevated land, so I could see down through there and see it. But I don't get real close like that. I always try to make sure that I've got a good place that if anybody's going to come at me, they can only come at me from 1 or 2 directions at the same time. And so, a lot of that is just good woodcraft. It ain't got nothing to do with Sasquatch. It's just what you learn in the woods. And I've been in the woods enough. I grew up in it. Daddy was a great hunter-gatherer. And he taught me what I know up till I got grown. And then I taught myself the other stuff. But, you got to know what you're doing. And if they see that you're competent.
Wise words for sure. I'm going to have to keep Mark Twain on my radar because that's kind of more up near my area too, more or less. But Joe, I got one final question for you. It's been a pleasure chatting with you again. Thank you. But something I'm going to be asking, I'm going to be asking this from here on out, just because this is kind of a out of left field one, but have you ever run into reports of people seeing or experiencing what they say looks like a hyena?
The hyena.
A hyena.
No, I haven't heard anything like that. I think we talked about it the last time. The only thing that I have run into is people talk about dog man, and I've never seen one. But what I have seen is a big bipedal animal that looks like a baboon.
I remember you saying that.
And a lot of people say that's gugways.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people say that's gugways, but when you look at a gugway, the nose looks almost like a bear on their pictures. That's not what I see. What I seen looked like a giant baboon, no tail. But he was his neck and head was solid white, and it looked like somebody took a giant marquee and drew him big black eyebrows. His canines were about 3.5 inches long on the top of his muzzle, and the bottom ones were about an inch and a half shorter. And the way I know how big they were is I saw one yawn at me when I was getting up on it. Well, I walked up. I was coming out of the woods. So I'd been bow hunting, and I'd come out of the woods. So it was after dark. It's like 8:30. I'd set up way after there because I went to sleep. And so I was coming out, and I heard something moving. And I've got a light that's 999 lumens. Or 999,000 lumens. So when I light it up, it makes everything look like daytime. And you can adjust the beam to be real bright down to it makes a little square. And I heard something in the woods, and I was walking down the road, so I popped that on and shine it up there, and it was one of these animals. The belly was white too, but everything else was black. And it was sitting there eating a handful of green pine needles, and it was holding it and chewing on it on the side, just like you see Bugs Bunny chewing on a carrot on the cartoons. And I sat there, and he was looking around, didn't care if I was there, got the light on him, nothing, didn't pay attention to me. I started walking up on him, and I got about 45 feet from him, and he rolled his lip up like a baboon does. And I stopped there a little bit, and he'd look at me and look down, look up at me, roll his lip, look down, and look to the side. So then he kept on eating. So I took another step or two up, and then he yawned real loud at me and huffed. And I knew then he wasn't bored. He was nervous. And so I stopped. I said, okay, look, I'm watching you, but I'm going to back off. So I backed off another 10, 15 feet backwards and still held the light on him. He didn't care. I was sitting there watching him for nothing. And I sat there and watched him for about 30 minutes. He got up and walked off on all fours just like a baboon and went down towards the river. And when I made sure he wasn't going the way I was going, I cut back. He was going northeast, and I headed south, the southwest direction. I was just going to make sure he wasn't going to run up on me whenever I turned that light off. So after he got gone, he didn't act like he cared if I knew he was there or not. So I went and talked to game warden the next week after that down there, and I seen him. And I just pulled up. I said, "Hey, I want to ask you a question." He said, "Sure, go ahead." I said, "Are there any large mammals besides black bears and cougar down here that I can't shoot?" And he sat there and thought a minute. He said, "Well, besides black bear and cougars," he said, "Mammals, no." He said. I said, okay. So that told me that there was something, there could be something bigger than, like alligators or something down there, because he specified mammals. So he said, mammals? No. So I said, all right, thanks. So I turned around and walked off. I got about 10 steps from him, and he hollered at me and said, hey, come here. And I said, what? He said, why'd you ask me that question? I said, oh, no reason. I said, you wouldn't believe me if I told you anyway. I said, so I don't want you to think I'm crazy. He said, no. He said, just tell me why you think that. And so I sat there and I told him about what I seen, and then me sitting there watching him. He said, hey, will you come up here to the office and show me on the map where you saw him at? I said, sure. So this, I found out this game warden is an incoming biologist up here. The guy who was retiring was still in the process of retiring, so he'd been there 30 something years, and he was at the office up there. So he walked in, and after I followed him up there, and we got at his office, we walked in there where there's a big old map of it, and he called that other guy in there, and he told him, said, I want you to hear this, what we're talking about. And he asked me to tell the guy what I saw again, describe him and everything. And I told him what I saw. And he said, well, where'd you see it at on the map? And I pointed on the map and I showed him. And that game warden the new one told the other one, said, that's where I saw those tracks at around through there. I said, yeah, there's tracks up through there now. I said, I'll come back tomorrow and probably see if I can figure out where it come from. And he said, well, let's look at doing that sometime if you don't mind me going with you. I said, I don't mind. It's free country, whatever. And so I showed him, and he asked the guy that was retiring. He said, "Do you know anything about this?" And he said, on the record, I don't know anything. He said, but just us sitting here BSing off the record. He said, I've seen the tracks, but I ain't never seen the animal that makes them. And so we went. Make a long story short, about a week and a half later, we went and we're looking around up through there for deer. Was looking for deer along that road, and he happened to come through, and we stopped and talked a little while. And he's like, we ain't far from where you saw those tracks, are you? I was like, no, let's go up there and see. And so we went up there, and I took pictures of the tracks. So I had my bow with me, and I put my arrow down and my bow down and took pictures of a couple of the tracks, and I think one of them I put a water bottle down so you get the size of it. But we tracked that foot trail for about a mile and a quarter, and it disappeared. And I don't know if it jumped up on a tree and swung around or what, but we couldn't find it. It went into a thicket, and we couldn't find any undergrowth or broke down or any leaves messed up or anything. So I don't know where it went from there. But I do know that about 4 weeks later, that whole area was tilled up, made into a feeding plot.
Really? Oh, wow. That's really interesting. I'm sure you can't share specifics about the location, but is there like maybe county area or anything you can share about?
Yeah, it's a public wildlife management area.
Oh, it is?
7,000 acres. When I first moved down to Mississippi, I always hunted on private property. I got down here and I didn't have any private property to hunt on, so I found the wildlife management area, and I went in and talked with a guy that was working down there at the time, that was putting out food plots and stuff. And he said, listen, if you bow hunt down here, you got 7,000 acres to yourself in this part of the management area. And I said, why? He said, won't nobody go in there. He said, it's creepy. He said, I work down here and I make my food plots and stuff down here. He said, but I don't stay around here after 2 or 3 in the afternoon, because it creeps me out all day so much that I can't stand in any of this area. He said, the rest of the park, the rest of the management area ain't like that. He said, it's this area. I said, that's probably because that's something in there. But my thinking, I told him was, that's where I want to be, because that means all the big bucks run in here hiding from all the other hunters. Wow. And that's where I want to be. And that's when I went looking in through there. I wasn't even looking for Sasquatch when I run across them down there. I was looking for big deer.
Uh-huh. Can you share what wildlife management area that is?
It's in the Divide. Oh, that's what it's called, the Divide Wildlife Management Area in Tishomingo County.
Very interesting. That was a very interesting story at the end. I know you'd kind of shared that the first time, but there was definitely some interesting details in it this time as well. So listeners, if you know anything about the Divide Wildlife Management Area in Tishomingo County, Mississippi, right?
You're right. Stay on the east side. Stay on the east side of the Tom Bigby. Right. Don't go on the west side.
Okay, east side of the creek.
Oh, it's the Tom Bigby Waterway.
Okay.
The Tennessee Tom Bigby Waterway connects the Tennessee River to the Tom Bigby River. It's a large channel that goes down there. It's man-made, but it's probably a quarter mile wide. I don't know how deep it is. I ain't never swim it, but it's barges go from the Tennessee River to the Tom Bigby River through the 10 Tom there. You can probably see it on a map if you're looking at a map.
Sure.
Is in Tishomingo County. It runs across Highway 72 around Burnsville, Mississippi, just east of Burnsville.
Well, there you go, listeners. If you've experienced anything weird in there, definitely let me know or put it in the comments so people can share. But Joe, it's always a pleasure to chat with you. You've had some wild things happen, and thank you so much for hanging out. I'm sure there's some new listeners this time that are like, I've got something weird happening in my house. How do I get in touch with Joe?
Send you a comment or holler at you. I'm on Facebook. Joseph Nathaniel Flippo. It's no secret.
All right.
People around here that know me know what I do. There's a lot of people that say I'm an expert, but I've got real life experience. I don't sit around and look at Sasquatch through a screen and think about anything. And there's a lot of people who claim to be experts that they're not experts. They're experts in their own mind, but if you get chased out of the woods, you don't know what you're doing. You're harassing wildlife.
Man, wild stuff. Well, thank you so much for hanging out today, Joe, and I appreciate you coming on.
Well, you're welcome. You're welcome. Yeah, I've been doing this for a while. Like I said, I told you before, I can talk for days about this because this is my jam. That's stuff that I know, and it amazes me that people don't know about this stuff because I started out as a skeptic, and I didn't even till I saw one, and I had to admit, look, I saw it. It's got to be there. That's when I started looking and things started clicking. But, I haven't learned anything that anybody else that takes the time can't learn. Knowing what to look for sometimes is just as important as knowing what to not look for. And you got to be able to look and say, if a man can make this, 90% of the time he probably did.
Mm-hmm.
But if you got a oak tree that's got a 15, 16-inch base that's upside down, jammed in the ground, a man didn't do that unless there's a bunch of tractor prints all around it, and they'll be there a while. But if it's not just obvious that a man couldn't do it, I always give the benefit of the doubt to humans because humans are in the woods a lot that other people don't realize. You're not the only ones that's in the woods, and you got to be careful too. I had a couple of experts get mad at me one time and kicked me out of their group because I asked them when they're in the woods, how do they know that when they're hollering and something answering that it's not another expert hollering back at them? And they didn't seem to like that too well. But you got to be able to know what the real thing is by knowing what the fakes are.
Absolutely. You got to be okay with people asking questions. That's a big red flag if you're not. So,
but I know there's people that make comments say that, I'm a fraud or whatever, or I I don't lie. I say, look, just come in the woods with me. I don't ever charge anybody for anything out there. If they ask me and they need help, I know how it is. I've been there. I've been on both sides of it. So I say, listen, I'll come down and look, whatever we're at, depends on where it is and how I'm able to get there because of my schedule. But this time of year is pretty picked up, and I do stuff. I was actually on the internet today looking up some information about a place down there in Hernando De Soto National Park down here in South Mississippi. They got some stuff going on down there that's interesting. But yeah, I enjoyed talking with you, Dale. Feel free to holler at me if you need to ask a question or whatever. If I know the answer, I'll tell you. If I've not had any experience with it, I don't have a problem saying I don't know, but we'll figure it out.
That's right. And, I appreciate that.
That's goes for a lot of different things, and you can keep them out of your yard. People say you can't. There's ways to do that, but that's a different show all in itself.
Absolutely. Well, Joe, thank you, sir.
Oh, you're welcome. You have a good day, and I hope y'all have a good rest of the month. It's holiday season coming up, so listen for that family member that don't mind telling you the crazy stuff because they just might be right.
Oh, I love it. That's good advice. That's good advice. Well, all right. I'll be in touch with you, Joe.
All right. It's good talking to you.
Please take a minute to help out the show by subscribing on YouTube, making sure you hit the bell so you don't miss any notifications, and share the episode on YouTube with a friend. Also, if you're listening to us on a podcast, thank you so much. Make sure that you're subscribed, share the show with a friend. Really, it's all about sharing the show wherever you can. If you've had a Bigfoot encounter related to the following or know someone who has, please reach out to me at bigfootsociety@gmail.com or pass on my email. Here's the list. If you've had any encounters in Oregon, which I'm sure there's probably a few of you out there, please feel free to reach out immediately. You can use email bigfootsociety@gmail.com. A special thank you to all the Bigfoot Society Patreon and YouTube channel members. It's your support that helps keep the show going, and I extremely appreciate it. If you want to join in the fun, you can join over at patreon.com/the Bigfoot Society. I'll see you there. And again, thanks for listening.
Her and I can get on here and we can tell our stories. Maybe there's somebody else out there listening that's too afraid to tell their story. Maybe this will give them the courage to come out and not feel so bad about it. Who cares what anybody thinks? I know what I saw. I know what's out there. That's all I care about.
Let people know. Please let them know. If you ever see one of these things, you need to tell. Because if you don't, then shame on you. Shame on you.